Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Welcome to the broadcast, everyone. This is Rich Scheben broadcasting live from Montana on this January 14th. Getting close to the end of the week here. Days are getting long. My off-grid solar array is getting pretty healthy, and I think my days of supplementing with my generator are few and far in between at this point. Anyway, welcome to the broadcast, everybody. I have very little on election fraud, believe it or not, but I've been doing 2.5 months of it, and I have articles that show the consequences of where we're going. In fact, let's make the theme of the day where we're heading as a country. And I believe, I didn't get confirmation from GCN, but I believe that Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. They were supposed to get back to me. The guy said he thought it was Jason, so I'm going to give kudos to Jason. And if somebody else is broadcasting, kudos to you too. But I want to thank all you guys for your hard work in Minnesota for engineering the broadcast. So what I think I'm just going to do is I'm going to start with articles. And then I'm going to make my usual comments and probably my usual disclaimers of these are published articles in the public domain type disclaimers. And I say these things because some of these articles are so surreal, so comical, often so treasonous and seditious. And it's hard to believe that we're paying these government people, whether they be politicians, any government work, any department, any institution, we're paying them 10 to 20 times the salary that we get. That includes benefit packages and pensions that we don't get. And it's amazing how they just sell us out. So I'm going to mix a bunch of different articles, because, again, I don't have much on election/voter fraud. So here we go. First article. And I use articles. I use sometimes I dissect interviews, whether it be on video or transcript. I take, sometimes it's tweets or other communications, and I compile them all into one. And sometimes I got to read an article that takes me 10, 15 minutes, sometimes for 1 or 2 sentences of meat and potatoes, if you will. So some people ask how I go about that process. What I try and do is watch these interviews, read these articles, and take communications that's on the internet and combine it to as few words as possible, so I don't spend all day talking about 4 different topics or 4 different articles, because I've listened to many talk shows who do that, and it drives me absolutely crazy, because I want information. I want objective facts. I don't mind stories. I don't mind a little philosophy, but at this time in our history, we need very few stories, very little philosophy, very little subjective emotional opinion. We need hard facts. We need objectivity. That's the only way to wake the people up, because there's a lot of people who are desperate right now financially, economically. Anxiety levels are high. Suicides are all-time high. Drug use is all-time high. Overdose is all-time high. I can go on and on and on. We're living right now in America with the highest divorce rate we've ever had, the lowest marriage rate we've ever had, and the most fathers being kicked out of their homes, the most we've ever had. So here's the first article, folks. I just want to give you a little background where I get my articles, where I get my all my information, how I glean information out of videos. And here we go. Okay. First one. You just can't make it up. You know, when you hear an article that starts like that, you just know you got to be sitting down to read the article. But the article is, after stealing the 2020 election in the greatest heist ever, Joe Biden announces his theme to be unity. You know, you can't make this up. And there's no way we can be in a united situation with all the hypocrisy and double standards that come from these people. They're not practicing what they preach at all. Just, you know, the impeachment in Congress is just some more antics. And we're going to talk about that in some detail as I move on in the broadcast. Next article. Hillary says the GOP and the conservative media can begin the healing by stating Biden was the duly elected president. Hillary, no freaking way. It ain't going to happen. So I have an article here, or what I did was I gleaned the major portions of it. It's by Jovan Pulitzer. We've talked about him, and he's like a forensic guy. He's like a genius. He's an American hero. He's done a lot of work talking about how if you recall the articles we've talked about where Republican and Democrat ballots were different, and the bullseye was not centered for to catch the vote for the Republican side. That's the kind of stuff that this guy, Jovan Pulitzer, does. Well, he just came out yesterday with a PDF, and you can find it. I think it's on the Gateway Pundit, but it should be all over the Internet by now. This is yesterday's news. And this is what the meat and potatoes, and there's more information, but this basically, it involved millions of votes, and he sent a copy to we the people and to the GOP and to Donald Trump of foreign election interference for our review so we can share it. I really recommend you read at least the article, if not glean some of this information. Remember how we've always thought it was like 5 or 6, maybe 7 countries that were interfering in foreign interference, because we referred to that, and I spent a lot of time, which I'm not going to do now, but I've spent hours on the 2018 executive order and the Insurrection Act of 1807. I've spent lots of time on that, lots of time. Well, guess how many countries participated in attacking our elections? 65. 65. Let me say that again. 65. Let me say that a different way. 60 plus another 5 countries participated in attacking 7 key states, over 600 polling locations, and Jovan Pulitzer says this is vetted and factual information, and the PDF is out to the people right now. Oops, did I say we didn't have any election voter fraud information? Sorry, my bad. But think about this, folks. 65 countries. I mean, I read, I'm embarrassed to say how many hours a day I read. But I'll tell you something, over the past 2.5 months, I've been on this show for 2 to 3 days a week. So let's say 2.5 days. So let's say 10 days a month. So for 2.5 months, I've been on 25 days. Post-election. This is on air, post-election. And I'm being conservative because I've also interviewed Gwyneth Isaacs, and I've spent some time interviewing Dr. Norm Shealy. And I'm being conservative with this. I usually give at least 50 hard facts of objective facts of evidence. So when you look at 25 days times 50, that's about what? 1,250 days of election / voter fraud evidence and facts that I have given. I want you to think about that. And I couldn't even get close with all the hours of studying I do per day for my country, not for money, not for recognition, for my country. And is it for President Trump? It is also. However, this is way bigger than President Trump. We have literally gotten to the point where nothing means anything anymore. I mean, how do you even justify what I just mentioned here? You can't. It's pathetic. It's a joke. I mean, when you think about all the, in the 10 years I've been on the air, I've talked about Marx and the communist, whatever they call that. I'm losing that train of thought right now. That agenda, the Cloward and Piven, the Frankfurt School, all this stuff, Alinsky. There's a reason why I've read excerpts and talked about different aspects of this, because everything is planned. And I'm going to talk about, again, more evidence showing up in video later in the broadcast regarding the planned Capitol siege. You're not going to believe it. Hopefully some of you have already seen it. So when you hear the Dems, the deep state, the powers that be, the establishment, I don't care what you decide to call it. Some of you like to call it the communists. You call it whatever you want. When they say words like democracy, they refer to the Constitution, or the fact that once in a while they spill and they say, oh, well, we're not a democracy, which they very rarely do. It's usually the Republican side that has to remind them that we're a constitutional republic. And I love it when they say rule of law. When these people say these words, it's just like hearing anybody saying over the radio, spaghetti, chair, water, mountain, table, tree, bug. It means nothing. They say these things, they turn a lot of these things into politically correct buzzwords. They say words that have meaning to show that they have some clout and credibility and validity in their message, and they don't even mean a word they say. Like when Donald Trump at the Capitol said to go march peacefully. They took that word and re-engineered it and redefined it. The left didn't even acknowledge that Donald Trump said it. Now, I know I've been harsh on Mike Pence, and deservedly so, the whole country has. And President VP Pence, I want nothing more than to be wrong. I want nothing more to have you prove that this was a 3D chess sting operation. I would love to hear it. But when you and Amy Barrett, who brag about your God, Christian, Christ, Bible, Constitution, and you just talk, and don't practice what you preach, it eliminates trust. Welcome back to the broadcast, everybody. Rich Scheben from Montana sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. He will be back tomorrow on the air. So he'll be talking about a lot of different stuff with another one of our instructors. And I just want to go back to Hillary's comment on how the conservative media must begin the healing by stating that Joe Biden was duly elected. When little old me, okay, little old me, never mind, when I first started in the alternative media, if you will, the new media, whatever you want to call it, talking about truth, standing for principle, which is the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody, truth, and if someone has less consequences for their behavior because of what group they're in, then you get to do it too. So, little old me gives 1,250, this is post-election, never mind all the warnings that we gave prior to the election of the behaviors that you were doing. Like, for example, the fraud on the Constitution, where state legislatures were illegally, criminally, as per our Constitution, cast aside by your establishment. So your people, the state Supreme Courts, the governors, the attorney generals, the secretary of states, the hairstylists who work for the state, they all came in, had meetings, and changed the rules and the laws right before the election, which is illegal. And you want us to call Joe Biden duly elected when little old me, never mind the thousands now of alternative media sites, probably, I don't know if there's 10,000, but it's in the thousands for sure. 10 years ago it was in the hundreds. I guarantee you there's nobody in the world, the whole world was watching Hillary. The polls say 55% don't believe that Joe Biden was duly elected. Those are people who are called on phones, who are using their cell phones, who are using self-identifying marks and are afraid to tell the truth. From my numbers, it's like 80% of the people believe Donald Trump won by a landslide. And that's what we have proven on this broadcast and all the other alternative medias. So when you cast aside your state legislatures to change the rules and the laws with unconstitutional, illegal people, how can anybody admit that Joe Biden was duly elected? I mean, in Arizona alone, one county that allowed signature matches found out that there was 11% fraud. Keep in mind, signature matches are one criteria, one category out of maybe hundreds that show the discrepancy of votes. And we got 11% in one county, 11% fraud in one county, and yet all these swing states won't even allow signature verification, won't allow forensic matching of the computers and the ballots. We have videos of people, videos of people, literally, of people sitting in, these videos are in the election buildings. It's not like it was made up. Some of them were patriots recording, and then they sent it off. I mean, this is really ridiculous, people. And then when Joe Van Pulitzer basically creates a PDF of congressional election fraud briefing and says that he vetted and it's all factual numbers and math. And this shows election interference for 65 countries. Now, I'm studying hours per day. I'm embarrassed to say how many, because I'm putting all my 100% effort into this. 65 countries. I thought it was 5, 6, or 7 countries participating in these attacks. 65 in 7 key states, over 600 county polling locations. For those of you listening, you need to get a copy of this. You need to do your due diligence. You need, when people say, "Oh, well, that's not true. There's no, it's all made up. It's a conspiracy theorist." You have the math, you have the study, you have the article, you have the information, and this is 1 out of 1,250 that I've given personally over the past 2.5 months. We'll be right back, folks. We appreciate you being here. Welcome back to the broadcast, everybody. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vince Finelli. And it looks like we're going to have a beautiful sunny day here in northwest Montana, a beautiful solar day, which I'm always looking forward to. So getting back to Hillary, see, Hillary, how can you expect us to acknowledge that Joe Biden's duly elected when close to 80% of the people disagree with that and 55% admit it? Do you know, pardon me, do you know that on InfoWars yesterday, and I take this with a grain of salt, Steve Pieczenik, Pardon me, I got to get a quick drink of water here. Okay, that's the hazards of monologuing. Steve Pieczenik was on InfoWars. I'm sure some of you probably saw it. It didn't go as viral as one of his, about 2 months ago, he had another interview with Alex Jones, and he said basically the same thing, that Joe Biden was going to be arrested, that this is a giant sting operation, that Donald Trump is going to be reelected, has been reelected. Well, you know, I don't want to ride the roller coaster. I'm kind of like, you know, Vince lives in Missouri. I'm kind of like, I think my ancestors may be from there, and we all know where that's going, and that's the show me state. I like hard facts. I like delivered hard facts, packaged hard facts. I like math. I like rule of law. See, if I don't get these objective facts and the dots become connected, I don't get real excited. But that's just me. So, oops, more election fraud stuff. I don't know where this keeps coming from. My bad. So anyway, before the break, I was talking about what means anything anymore. The theme of the day, I just kind of headed it as where we're heading as a country. But when people's word means nothing, when the Constitution means nothing, when the Republic means nothing, when they throw out words like democracy, rule of law, humanity, and they don't back it up, it's just like, again, me saying table, chair, stove, floor, tree, water, river, animal. Nothing matters. It has the same effect when you don't connect the dots and have the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody in the picture. And we're not even close to that. See, everything, all these words, all these feelings, everything's becoming extinct. Everything's going on the chopping block. Consumer confidence, trust, merit for a job means nothing. Remember, you always hear me talking about hard work, effort, proven results, qualifications. It means nothing anymore. Everything's about what group you're in. So these are divide and conquer strategies. And I'm going to try and say divide and conquer 500 times today. Of course, I'm joking. But people need to realize that we're being set up, we're being used, we're being played, we're being duped. Because that's one of the reasons I've been on the air so much, showing evidence of the monies going from the little guy to the top 1% to 2%. All this equality, fairness, tolerance, and diversity, these are politically correct buzzwords used as tools to divide us. I'm going to make a little note to hopefully say that again before the show's over today. So, more on the chopping block. You know, truth, the middle class, small and medium-sized business. All those people who thought, it's for the betterment of the people. It's for equality, fairness, tolerance. No, it's not. Fascism isn't about that. When big corporations and the corrupt portion of government get together, that's what fascism is. And they create, we literally have a fascist welfare recipient department. And the beneficiaries are the big corporations and the most corrupt portion of big government. So they're not representing us, the little people. They're representing the wealthy elite. This is why I show the articles. I do the math. I do the economic 101 updates that you've heard me give many times over the past 10 years. What's happening to our freedoms, our liberties, our justice, rights, protection, restitution under the rule of law? There's no representation. So if they track, they censor, they surveil you, they want to inject you with poisons, they want to do anything they want, you don't have the right to say no. That's where we're going. If this installment doesn't stop. Any standards, any expectations or qualifications for a job, I've given probably thousands of examples of that over the years, are gone. The people who are benefiting are the sellouts, the traitors, tattletales, the turncoats, the Benedict Arnolds, the people who publicly trash our country are the ones getting the opportunities. See, as the people become groomed for these behaviors, they justify and rationalize your own behaviors with hate because you're offended, because your group, your narrative, your hyphen, your pronoun. You got to stick up for it, or your own self-interest. You feel the need to publicly sell out so the world can see. So maybe, just maybe, they won't come after you, but they will. Because if you read history, it happens every time. They want you to buy from the company store and read the company propaganda. And if you don't, you're controversial, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, conspiracy theorist, basically anti-Islamist phobe. That's called living in Nazi Germany and the USSR combined. We cannot have a multi-tiered justice system. And when I say that, I don't mean just for it's going to end up being two, the aristocracy versus the serfs. But during the interim, they have to divide us. So we're going to have, and I've mentioned this many times with many examples, they're going to have multi-tiered, and they do, multi-tiered justice systems based on your gender, the gender you identify as, your shade of skin pigmentation, your religion, your sexual orientation, etc. Now, I know they use the word racist most of the time, but think about some of the stupid things that they call racist over the years. Bulletproof glass. Disney movies. I remember they called yoga racist. And Elizabeth Warren, when you called her Pocahontas, that was racist. Milk was racist. Not just because of the color, but I remember them saying, I think I mentioned this to Dr. Shealy once, I remember them saying that because whites don't have enough lactose intolerance. You can't make this up. I remember science was called racist because black magic couldn't be explained by students in South Africa. I remember they called math racist, camouflage racist, Lucky Charms cereal racist. Look it up. It's probably been purged. I remember for hiring people for jobs in commerce, it was if you expected certain groups to show up on time for your job, you were racist. How many times, how many examples have I shared the propaganda, the hoaxes, the false flags, the lies, the gaslighting, the lowering the bars of standards and expectations, which is directly proportional to lowering of quality. And believe it or not, they even say that if you say you're not racist, that you're racist. This is how stupid we have gotten. For those of you who are regular listeners, you heard me say when I was in elementary school, a little story. Real quick, it was when Ali was fighting Frazier. This is elementary school, I don't know, first, second grade. And I remember some of the kids would yell, "Who's going to win? Ali, Ali." And everybody would yell, "Ali, Ali." 5 minutes later, they'd yell, "Frazier, Frazier, Frazier." And you could just tell right off the bat who's going to be followers and who's going to be thinkers. So guess what? Every time one or two people said Ali or Frazier, some of the useful idiots would say the same thing. This is what's happening now. We're acting like elementary school kids when we do group think and we don't have the guts to stand up for what's right, to stand up for the Constitution. And this is why you hear me say criteria for a job and qualifications and how we should be judged is by patriotism, intelligence, and courage. That's the PIC acronym. It's easy to remember. Pneumonia, influenza, COVID, right? All that stuff is now being labeled as COVID. The PIC acronym. That should be, those three criteria should be the very first criteria that we're all judged for a job and for being Americans. Patriotism, intelligence, and courage. But see, when they hijack your thoughts, manufacture your ideology, use your ego, that's called a psyop, folks. Because you get offended that someone might be insulting your group, your hyphen, or your pronoun. I got a couple questions for you. Let me just throw two questions at you. Will you have the courage to realize that you've been played after you have no rights left? When are you willing to stand for principle and have the courage to be hated for telling the truth? Or, let's call this question number 2. Are you willing to sell out your fellow Americans and blow smoke up everybody's butt so you can be liked for your own personal gain at the expense of your own country? If you choose the latter, choice number 2, you're spitting on the graves of over 1 million American combat soldiers who gave their life to this country. In other words, you are betraying them and you're betraying America. We appreciate you being here, folks. I'll be right back with some more articles and news after this break. Welcome back, everyone. So, before the break, I was going off on one of my tangent rants, my TRs, and I might as well just finish the thought. Now, when you talk about betraying the country, betraying our soldiers, betraying the families who gave their children, their combat soldiers, for this duty to protect us from terrorists, from traitors, foreign and domestic. And we see this betrayal going on in our country today. What is the left? And they're not really the left. We all know it's not a left-right paradigm. What are these people asking soldiers to do today? Are they asking today's soldiers to rip the American flag off their uniform, off their chest, off their shoulder? Think about being a soldier today and seeing the treason, the sedition against a duly elected president, and I mean Donald Trump. Breaking the rule of law, fraud on the Constitution at probably 100 levels that we've just talked about here, not just with the state legislatures situation. What are these young combat soldiers fighting for? I bet they're asking that question to themselves right now. Are they getting much leadership when the Joint Chiefs of Staff has the audacity to refer to the Constitution in that ridiculous letter? And you're asking soldiers to put their life on the line for who? For what? The Constitution? The people at the top already sold out the people, we the people, whether it be through bribery or blackmail or threats. They've sold us out. So what are these soldiers fighting for? I bet they're asking that question to themselves right now. I'll tell you who they're fighting for. We all know it. I've said it a million times. To the people who have addictions to power, money, and control. They are basically taking advantage of people who still believe there's a left-right paradigm. And at the same time, not just behind their back, but to their face, they're calling them useful idiots. But should you ignore, or let me rephrase that, you better ignore, as per the aristocracy, all the double standards and hypocrisies. You know, that's like a category on this broadcast. Actually, this is like a secondary, hypocrisy and double standards is like a secondary culture in America. Accountability. You hear all these words. You know, I've referred to them, I hear them all the time, ethics, morals, values, rule of law, accountability. They're pathetic joke words. They're satire. They mean nothing because they have a separate sliding scale of meaning based on what group you're in. So these people who ask for your behaviors to be checked, to be outlawed, while offering little or no consequences for the behaviors from the same group demanding that you and your behaviors be checked. You can't, it's the hypocrisy and double standards is unbelievable. It's off the page. And I've given, I don't know how many examples, countless examples. Like I said, it's a category on this show and a subculture in our country now. So when you have all these people who sold out the people for money, for blackmail, and there's nothing, you can't believe anything anymore. Science, healthcare. I mean, hospitals and physicians getting paid fortunes just to fake a diagnosis of COVID when PCR tests are 97% ineffective and fraudulent. When there's no increase in death from 2019 to 2020. When Johns Hopkins put out a study that they had to retract because they were afraid of retribution that said that there wasn't an increase in death, including for old people. Look, we believe this is a virus. We believe that if you have comorbidities and if you're 70 years or older, you're at a higher risk, okay? That's pretty much for anything, any virus, any bacteria. But to use the agenda of closing down work, closing down businesses, where all the suicides and the drug overdose and all the bad things are happening. Technology controlling us, getting rid of peaceful assembly, free markets, supply and demand, delegitimizing work, eliminating voting, stuffing Joe Biden in the basement for everything virtual and non-real, eliminating the Constitution, starving the people, depopulation, eliminating free speech, immunity passports, forced lockdowns, house arrest. We're seeing the consequences of inaction towards political correctness big time, folks. I will return after the top of the hour break. Appreciate you being here. Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Hour number 2, Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. And right before the break, I was talking about regarding what to believe and who hasn't really sold us out, who hasn't been taking the money, accepting the blackmail. And I was talking about science and healthcare and our own hospitals, academia, mathematicians, climate hoaxers, polls, elections, judges, lawyers, courts, all groups who want to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, bankers, politicians, big tech, big corporations, big pharma. I even mentioned the military. I sure hope they honor their oath. We're living in very scary times. I mean, even the FCC, I think it's the FCC, but the government organization that runs emergency comms, the broadcast system, there's a lot of talk right now. If something goes down over the next more declassifications, if you will, showing election and voter fraud, which I don't know, there's so much evidence. I mean, and we have our own Supreme Court not even willing to look at the evidence. It's just a real joke what America's turned into, where everybody's bought and paid for. There's no legitimacy in any institution right now. But regarding our broadcast system, our emergency comms, if you will, I hear people saying that, well, you know what, if they don't let President Trump use the emergency broadcast system, that's against the law. Are you kidding me? Against the law? I mean, they've been spying on Donald Trump for years. Fake Russia collusion. I mean, this hoax, that hoax, fake Mueller trials, fake dossiers. I mean, and then the Republicans say, oh, well, these people, these rhino neocon traitors, they're going to lose their primaries. What a joke. Our elections are rigged. They don't care. It's totally fake. It's totally made up. There's no legitimacy in elections anymore. Come on. Please send me a check, and I have a bridge to sell you. I can't tell you when it's going to get there, but it'll probably be a virtual bridge, so you can print it out and put the picture on the wall. Thank you very much. This is the illusion that we're living in America, from the economy to our everything. We've turned, once we've eliminated the voice of the people through freedom of speech and elections, it's gone. That's why this next 7 days is so important, folks. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, whoa. So let me go to more information, more articles, and I'm going to go through them as quickly as possible, which is hard to do because some of them are so surreal I have to make comments on. Texas election fraudster caught in Project Veritas, undercover sting, arrested for widespread vote harvesting. This is Texas. This is one of the states President Trump won. This is a phenomenon all over the country because they tried to get every state they could because he won in such a landslide, folks. What a joke. Next, the identity of Capitol policeman who shot unarmed Ashley Babbitt dead has not been released. Why is that? Does it not fit the narrative? Is he not a white male heterosexual with a Christian name? We'll have to see. Next, Barbara Boxer registers as foreign agent of China. How can this be, people? A few years ago, if you had a 20-year spy working for you, you'd be hung for treason. What the hell is going on with our country? Next, nobody is watching the NFL playoffs. Ratings crash. Now, I can't prove this to you, but I was always a very big NFL fan. The first Super Bowl I watched is when Broadway Joe won the Super Bowl and Super Bowl III for the New York Jets. I have not missed a Super Bowl yet. Last 2 years, I haven't seen regular season games, just a few playoff games in the Super Bowl. This year, not only have I not watched a game, I have not seen a playoff game, and I have no desire to watch a bunch of sellouts to our country in the Super Bowl. I don't care. Your bread and circus doesn't mean anything to me any longer. You're sellouts. You're working for your gazillionaire owners, and they've coerced you and strong-armed you to do something that you shouldn't be doing. That's communism, people. Next, small business death spiral begins. Next, restaurant and hotel workers hit with devastating layoffs in the industry. Next, 655 people have $4 trillion in wealth and $200 million can't cover a $1,000 expense. Well, just taking all three of those articles together, folks, we talked about fascism. We talked about how small business is going to create it. We talked about leisure and hospitality, where nobody wants to be tracked and traced and give their credit card anymore, so they're at a hotel and the powers that be know it. Now, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to travel. You have to do it. But nobody, the majority of people are going to abstain from leisure and hospitality if they're being tracked and traced and followed and documented. People don't want that anymore. Okay, next. Antifa, we should just call them Blantifa, led the attack at the Capitol that was utterly obvious, award-winning journalist Michael Yon on the Capitol protest. Tons of evidence of that. I'm going to get to it if I have time as well. Next, FBI activity looking at putting Capitol attackers on no-fly list. This is communist. This is USSR Nazi stuff. Next, turncoat VP Pence ignored a letter from Republicans in Wisconsin legislature in December contesting the results. Ignored it. See, facts don't matter. Evidence don't matter anymore, folks. It's irrelevant. That means you're irrelevant. That means you don't have a say. You get it? House Republican Liz Cheney. There has never been a greater betrayal by a president. I will vote to impeach. Last 2 days ago when I was on the air, I gave tons of quotes, paraphrases, referred to videos of so many Democrats who have induced violence, from Nancy Pelosi to Schumer to Maxine Waters. There is so many. I talked about the comparison between the Capitol so-called siege and what Blantifa's done. Like 23 times more deaths, like 150 times more small businesses being destroyed, like way more rapes, like way more statues being pummeled, like way more small businesses being destroyed. It's not even a comparison, folks. Remember, the mainstream media and the people on the left represent the elite. Their job is propaganda hoaxes, false flags, and lies, and especially gaslighting, which is a subset of lies. Next, Dem lawmaker introduces resolution to abolish Electoral College. If they do that, folks, unless you're living around maybe LA and New York City, maybe a few other metropolitan areas, you will not have a say for anything. You realize that, right? Next, Economy ECB head Christine Lagarde calls for global regulation of, quote, reprehensible Bitcoin. Well, when I checked this morning, Bitcoin was up like 14, 15% because she said that. In the last 24 hours, Bitcoin has done nothing but climb up. I haven't checked the last half an hour, but before the broadcast I did. This is basically, she just basically gave up the ghost here. Next, chaos in Italy, government collapses. Now, is this because of the Leonardo satellites that were affecting the steal of the election? Is this possibly because the Pope has been arrested? Don't know. See, that's the problem. Unless we have even reliable information, it looks like the FBI and the DOJ have sold out the American people and a big portion of the CIA. So when you get information from so-called official authorities or credible sources, and I'm using air quotes here, you can't even believe them. I believe zero, nothing, nada. What institutions, what the government says, what experts say, there's so much evidence of being bought and paid for and blackmail. I believe nothing. Zero. That's why we always say on this show is that you need to read, research, not be a follower, be a thinker. Verify on your own. That's what America needs to do today. Next, Democrats discuss liberation of the South. If you live in the South, folks, and they install Joe Biden, you want to get the hell out of there because it's going to be ugly. Next, another leftist arrested from Capitol protest is identified as a Democrat, 34-year-old son of a New York judge. Must be a conspiracy theory. I don't know where I read it. Oh my gosh, I'm shocked. That's sarcasm. Next, Michigan judge orders Democrat Secretary of State to release all communications with Dominion, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Google. Now, I don't know if this is a good cop, bad cop. I don't know if she said this because she got the thumbs up and okay that everything all the evidence has been purged and can't be found? Don't know. Don't believe a word they say. Not a word. Nothing. Nada. Zip. Next, university professor resigns after speaking at Trump rally. Retires. Resigns. Because he was forced to. Because he spoke at a Trump rally. This is Nazi, Stalin, Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot, all rolled into one, people. Next, Democrats changed House rules so they could smear President Trump repeatedly during impeachment sham as a racist and white supremacist. It's true. I really try hard to do my research, folks. See, this is what happens. When we live in a world that's made up, that's an illusion, where subjective emotional opinions dominate research objective facts, then the masses of people will always be dominated, cultivated, groomed to buy into whatever the narrative is. Doesn't matter how outrageous, how inaccurate it is. So all the rights and protections given to the little people, which I call the bottom 93%, will no longer be available. We, the people, will have a new pronoun. We'll be called them, and we'll be called subjects. Treason, high crimes, fraud, foreign interference by the elite will be the norm. That's what we can expect. Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. Right before the broadcast, I was talking about treason, high crimes, fraud. I want you to keep in mind that fraud is supposed to have a statute of limitations associated with it. So if someone did fraud years ago, they can still be put in prison for that fraud. The big problem is not the evidence, not the facts. The big problem is the lack of courage from people, whether it be the Supreme Court or anyone, willing to do their job, because they're very willing to be bought and paid for and blackmailed. So if that happens, nothing will matter. Nothing matters anymore, because the manufactured narrative from the elite delivered to you will be delivered to you by their lieutenant. I call them the lieutenants, basically the bought and paid for sellouts. So all definitions will become politically incorrect, reinterpreted. Definitions of corruption, fraud, extortion, racketeering, manipulation. Nothing will have meaning any longer. The word oath, duty, jurisdiction, facts, evidence will literally be made up as we go along for the benefit of the very few. Betraying the Constitution will end up being a reality show, and crimes and punishment will only be applicable to the little guy to keep them in line. While the cover-ups of all the crimes and the purging of evidence for the elite will continue, while offering useful idiots divide and conquer excuse behaviors to eliminate any chance of synergy and unity. This is what we're walking into. The elite will even make the Nuremberg Code and the Geneva Convention obsolete. They'll erase it from history. They'll redefine it. And if you bring it up in context with objective facts, it would be called a racist. But don't believe us, people. We're all conspiracy theorists. Or maybe we could blame it on Russia. That's right, it was all Russia's fault. And if that doesn't work, why, they put you in handcuffs and inject poison in your body and displace you from your job because you're not from the right group, and you don't have rights, protection, or restitution on the rule of law, because you don't have enough victim group status or group self-pity points, it won't matter. Because there'll be no one left to stand up for you. Basically, everything that I've said here, I've proven in articles in economics and math and facts and evidence over the years. Often, most of it in recent months. So what we're walking into is Beijing Biden's banana fake republic. Will be known as the BBBFR. The BBBFR. Beijing Biden's banana fake. So, we live the consequences of decades of inaction towards political correctness. The so-called experts, the official authorities, the infiltrated will offer to be paid off, blackmailed, and serve their own self-preservation needs and not the people's rights to justice. That's where we're heading. Restitution rights will be a thing of the past. Welcome to Beijing, America. So, I'm looking at the clock here, and I'm looking at my articles, and as usual, I'm not going to get close, but it's so hard not to go up into tangents here, people. So, next article. More than 1 million attended President Trump rallies since Labor Day. Not a single window broke. Policemen attacked. No one was killed, except for what happened at the Capitol. And Trump wasn't behind violence because he said peaceful. But yet they are getting rid of Trump. Welcome back, everyone. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. And I am going to continue with more articles, more information. I'm looking at the clock and I just can't believe it. All right, next. Everywhere a Trump voter turns, he sees apolitical organizations enlisting in the resistance. Here's an email just sent to every kid in America applying to college through the Common App. And this is another good time for me to say, yes, everything that I refer to, read, you, quote, paraphrase, has been, I try my best to verify its authenticity, and it's all published in the public domain. And what I'm about to read to you is surreal. And this is an email, again, sent to every kid in America applying to college. I'm going to quote this. Sit down, please. We witnessed a deeply disturbing attack on democracy on Wednesday when violent white supremacist insurrectionists stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to undo a fair and legal election. I'm trying not to stick my finger down my throat. Pardon the sidebar. The stark differences between how peaceful black and brown protesters have been treated for the years relative to Wednesday's coup, again, call attention to open wound of systemic racism. What this is, people, is more efforts by the elite who control the left, who fund the left, to make more race wars. They want race wars. They want gender wars. They want sexual orientation wars. They want religious wars. They want civil wars. They don't care how they get it, as long as they get divide and conquer strategies. And here's another article right here. Conservatives cannot be teachers, police officers, doctors, lawyers, coaches, or bosses. It's constitutionally unfair to others who are subjected to the conservatives' deranged judgment. Conservatives can do menial work until they're ready to join the human race. And that was a quote from a Democrat on Twitter. Propaganda, hoaxes, false flags, lies, gaslighting, divide and conquer strategies. I am out of breath talking about all of the ways, all the examples, never mind of fraud, but fraud for everything to divide us. You know, I have nothing against Democrats. I have nothing against the left. If you still think it's a left-right paradigm, that's your problem. But it really is the aristocracy managing, controlling the little people. I promise you. It's an addiction to power, money, and control. So I'm not against the Democrats. I'm against fraud. I'm anti-totalitarian, tyrannical, communist insurrection. I'm anti-multiple coups against a sitting, duly elected president, which is against the Constitution, which we've talked about in great detail and specificity. I'm against the changing of laws. I'm against eliminating the rule of law for precedents. I'm against oligarchies and the big governments that can be installed at will, including presidency and politicians, to displace jobs, businesses, opportunities, under the guise of suppressing or rewarding some group. We're walking into a trap, folks, where all jobs will be unearned. For example, it could be nepotism connections from a super wealthy, or it could be people getting jobs based on some manufactured narrative of victim or protectionist group status. Quality, standards, expectations, qualifications will be redefined or eliminated. It's not an equality, fairness, tolerance, diversity issue. I need to say this over and over and over again. I have given thousands of examples to show it's not about your group, hyphen, and pronoun. It's about taking the money and opportunity from the little guy and giving it to the top 1% to 2%. And them taking away your mind, your opportunity, your freedom, your liberty, your protection and rights and restitution under the rule of law. I've given thousands and thousands of examples of this. What it really boils down to is you'll never have representation again. Due process, chance of prosperity, unless maybe you're part of the bread and circus crowd. Even your right to pursue happiness will be eliminated. As long as we allow the enabled to corrupt us and divide us and conquer us, we're going to be played, we're going to be used. This is why I talk so often about the delegitimization of work, folks. It's real. When you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job because of what group you're in, you destroy our country. Feeling entitled to play the victim group status card is a divide and conquer strategy. And when you demand no rights, protection, or restitution of the rule of law for people who have been targeted and affected, you're allowing runaway power to be unchecked. And you're enabling, protecting the most corrupt companies and industries in the world with things like liability immunity, which creates more wealth inequality. If you put yourself, your group, your hyphen, and your pronoun before America, then it's all over. We are allowing the rule of law to be changed with precedents, which gives free lunch to the elite with no accountability. And that's one of the reasons we have one category, a subcategory in America now called hypocrisy and double standards. So, what's the bottom line? Well, the bottom line is the state's going to be your daddy now. Not just in the context of all of these decades of kicking males out of the household. The state will be your daddy, and you will be their children, which means they make the rule. And guess what? Your daddy is going to be run by non-elected people, so you'll have no say. There'll be no accountability. People who didn't earn their money or their position, in most cases. This will be the new America. So let me get back to more articles here. Oh my gosh, the time's going fast. Biden's Homeland Security will tax children. These are Project Veritases. I'm just going to mention a couple of them. PBS counsel who worked for PBS said children should be taken away and put in re-education camps. This is what they say behind the scenes. They admit they didn't, or they apologize later only after they get caught. This is what they want to do. Take your children, people. Next, FBI file dump. Nancy Pelosi's brother charged with raping underage girls, like 11-year-old girls. Next, Nancy Pelosi getting rid of the word mother and father and daughter and brother and sister, even though it's all over her bio. What a proud mother and wife and grandmother she is. What a joke. Hypocrisy and double standards run rampant. Next, Louis Gohmert dunks on Pelosi, quotes her support for Black Lives Matter. Liberals freak out. Well, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Presley, all these people are caught on video and or audio asking for violence against the Republicans. And you're pointing the finger at President Trump when Antifa were the first people to storm when there's so much evidence of this? Next, Pelosi chooses China spy lover Eric Swalwell to be on her new impeachment panel. You cannot make this up. And then Swalwell compares Trump to bin Laden when he was doinking a Chinese spy. Verified. You can't even make this stuff up, people. Next, Delta kicks 2 women off for having a private conversation about Trump. Octo! Show me your papers. Octo! Next, science and tech. Here we go. Twitter allows only fan star to post child rape fetish images after banning Trump and his supporters. But you can basically allow child rape fetish images on Twitter. You can't. I have no words for this. Next, Kurt Schilling of baseball says AIG canceled his insurance over his conservative beliefs. It shouldn't be right or left wing. It shouldn't be conservative or liberal. These are all fake terms. It should be about freedom, liberty, justice for all. It should be about our country. It should be about the rule of law. Stop with these labels that mean nothing. And good news, I don't have much of it. Ron DeSantis, Florida to divest all state funds from Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. I think, Ron, it's a little too little and too late, but we really appreciate you standing up for the rule of law, standing up for antitrust laws. All right, next. The FBI is setting up state capitol protests as false flags ops. So people, if you're planning on going to the Capitol, walk with your hands in your pocket, don't bring a weapon, don't engage, because this is what they want to do. I've been reading for the last few days, there's going to be false flag after false flag after false flag. Even though BLM or Blantifa activists are posted as Trump supporters before Capitol false flag. And there's so much evidence. I talked a lot about that on Tuesday. Everybody in the alternative media has been talking about this. It's a joke. Peter Strzok and Lisa Page text messages and the explosive interview notes of a lead FBI agent who admitted the Bureau never had any evidence of collusion but sustained the probe in a failed effort to get Trump. Next, now that the FBI has confirmed the Capitol riots were planned many days prior to Trump's January 6th speech, now the Democrat impeachers are moving the goalposts to prove that Trump incited the violence from his January 6th speech to remarks he made weeks earlier because he mentioned the word stolen. You can't make up this crap. You can't even a Twilight Zone episode writer couldn't pull this off. Next, Thomas Zimmerman, who serves as a special agent to the president for presidential personnel under Joe Biden, formerly served as a visiting scholar at what the FBI has called a front group for Chinese intelligence collection and overseas spy equipment the National Pulse can reveal. Again, folks, all published articles in the public domain. I do not make this stuff up. Okay? Next. Videos just uncovered of the Capitol riots. The Blantifa saying, what's the floor plan? Talking about detailed schematics of the building. See, when they talk about Nancy's laptop being stolen and there's certain evidence involved, to me it's all speculation. I'm not seeing anything. I know there's a lot of treason coming from the left, but all this is Blantifa. All of it. Proven. Next, the Supreme Court rejected a Democratic bid to force universal vote by mail in Texas, leaving intact the state law won't compromise election integrity in Texas with voting schemes that are subject to fraud. We will protect elections in Texas. Hey, Supreme Court, how about protecting the elections of our country instead of sitting back with a big fat paycheck with no accountability? Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Rich Scheben here from Montana. And as always, not usual, but always, time just flies. And I go into so many sidebars, which is almost impossible to resist because of the ridiculousness of some of these propagandas and hoaxes and false flags and sedition and treason and selling out of fellow Americans. It's we're living in a surreal time, and I sure hope it could be fixed. And that's one of the reasons I talk about the word oath and duty along with the military, because everything, I've mentioned so many unconstitutional actions, not just with the election fraud, but the treason and sedition is overwhelming. Us Americans, us little people who don't have any rights or restitution under the rule of law, are hoping that you guys remember your oath and your duty to the people. Next, Georgia state senators who backed attempts to overturn presidential elections stripped of committee assignments for telling the truth. See, this is what they do. They demonetize us, they demonize us, they discredit us, they delegitimize us. You're not allowed to tell the truth. You could be a dummy, you could be a sellout, you could be a traitor, you could be a tattletale and a snitch, as long as you read off the scripted cards. Read off the scripted cards. Next, all over the wires, Capitol Storm was a pre-planned event. I think we've given so much evidence of that. It was staged. It was a false flag. It was a political psyop. We've given so much evidence to support all that. Timeline confirms Capitol Storm began while POTUS was giving his speech. I talked about that, but I didn't talk about the last sentence that's coming up. Even though the president was calling for peaceful and patriotic protests, it's in video, it's in audio, it's in transcript, it's all there. Democrats say it isn't, but it's there. But could this be why the president started an hour late? Because the siege was planned. Just something I'm throwing out there, folks. Don't know. Again, when you don't have the inside information, a lot of it's speculation. A couple things about COVID. China rewrites COVID history, purges 300 studies linking virus to Wuhan lab. Now, if you recall, I read an article from AnnaVonRights.com where she said GlaxoSmithKline literally owns the Wuhan lab. Again, all the information I get, I try to verify. I try to verify from credible, valid sources. I don't make any of this stuff up. I know I say this disclaimer often. I don't do this just to protect myself. I do this because I want you to know that I don't make this stuff up. It all comes to me from credible sources. Next, rate of adverse effects or events caused by coronavirus vaccines 50 times higher than the flu shots. 50, that's 50. Not 15, 50. 50 times higher. And I've seen people shake from their legs to their arms. I've mentioned many deaths from this. It's up to you. I'm not telling anybody how to live. I'm trying to give information through, again, credible sources. Next, Trump to present bombshell evidence that COVID came from the Wuhan lab. Well, nothing against Donald Trump. He's my president. I'm going to stick with him to the very end because I know he won this in a landslide because I've been doing the study for this. I've been seeing the evidence. You know, it's just like that Pulitzer guy. I mean, this is getting to the point where things are just a twilight zone and evidence doesn't even matter. We can't have that. You know, it just, it's like, here it is, Jovan Pulitzer. I'm going to read it to you again like I did in the beginning of the broadcast. He just created a PDF talking about congressional election fraud, okay, interference. For those of you who might be coming into the broadcast late, he has evidence. It's been vetted and it's factual evidence of 65, that's 65, foreign countries participating in attacking 7 key states here in the United States with over 600 county polling locations. People, we can't allow them to do whatever they want, inject us with poison, rape your children. How do they normalize cover-up crimes for pedophilia? They normalize it. We have to stand up for nutritional foods. They don't want. We don't want to be taxed out. We don't want to be pushed in the cities. They say it's about ethics, morals, values, rule of law, accountability. No, that depends on what group you're in. They're setting precedents for everything. Pretty soon we'll have one group will be all poor,